Good evening. Please stand as you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the July 12th, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting for the school town of Speedway. We're working from a 12-item agenda, and the first item on the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting on 14th June 2022. Yes,
I move that we approve the minutes of the June 14th meeting.
thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes from the June 14th, 2022 meeting? That passes unanimously.
Minutes are signed.
Thank you. The second agenda item this evening is a presentation on drug testing.
Thank you. I would like to give you this year's summary on our random drug testing program. Due to COVID, the health department suggested we not do the saliva sample testing for the first semester. Once we got the okay to do that, we had the money in the account, so we actually doubled up in those last 4 months the size of the sample to be good stewards of that and try to get a sample of what's going on. As you can see there, we went to 20 tests per month, and we did have a couple of tests come back positive, which those were cleared later based on the student's prescription drug plan that their parents confirmed with us. So obviously vaping, use of vape products for THC, if you look anywhere, you can see that's on the rise in the state across the country. We continue to be vigilant in that, make sure we educate our students and try to do the best we can to make sure they know it's not good for them anywhere and it's 100% unacceptable at school.
Are there questions for JP Claypool?
Yeah. So it seems to me that I guess maybe I wonder whether the high school administration is satisfied that what we're doing acts as a deterrent.
I think definitely it does. You know, we have to be in any extracurricular, co-curricular, or drive to school. You're automatically inputted into the pool, and then we do have quite a few other families that elect to have their student participate. And I definitely believe that it's in the kids' best interest to know that they can be tested for the safety of the people they're competing against, for the people other on the road. And our kids really love those extracurriculars. And so knowing that they could be tested and lose some of those privileges, I definitely believe it's a effective deterrent.
I have a hard time, just given what I'm reading about the prevalence of marijuana use, that our student body isn't using. And so do we have a sense of whether even 20 tests a month isn't, is enough, I just, when I don't believe that no students are using, but we get zero, which is great, but it worries me that there's some, either, I don't know, I'm not even sure how to express my concern, but it just seems like I'm only really deterred if I think people are getting caught. But if I don't know, I know that 20 odd people got tested, but no one ever gets caught. Is that just because I don't know.
I think it'd be really naive to assume that these results indicate that no students are using any substances that they shouldn't be.
Right.
That's not what I take from this at all. There are, of course, students that are not in the pool, that do not participate, and that don't get called down during the random sample. And so I would definitely believe that the kids that are not in the pool would be disproportionately more likely to use those substances. This pool is not of our entire student body. It's of, like I said, the ones that fit the criteria and the ones who elect to participate.
Right. Okay. Can we get a report back at whatever point that plans that, these additional types of whatever, and whether that's a formal or whether that's just, having Dr. Trubley pass on to us what's going on? I continue to be interested in what plans we're developing to do things, maybe change things up or do things differently or add something, or especially with the vaping.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Claiborne, you're free to go home if you like at this point in time, so don't feel like you have to stay.
The third agenda item this evening is to approve a field trip for the junior high.
Mr. President, the recommendation is to approve this routine field trip for the junior high school band and choir to Kings Island. This is a same-day trip, but it is out of state. And to my historian to my left, 3 people to my left, said that this has been going on, and we both scratched our head for a long time. So I don't really know exactly when this started, but I think it's a good program, and because of COVID, it's an every other year. This is way early, but this is for next May. But my recommendation is to approve this field trip for our students.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the junior high field trip for the band.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the proposed field trip? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the field trip, please signify. That passes unanimously.
And if you guys would like to chaperone, just let me know, and I'll make sure I can get you on a bus to Kings Island with the kids.
Been there, done that.
Yes,
indeed.
Just let me know.
The fourth agenda item this evening is to designate equipment as surplus for disposal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once a year, we usually come, or I come and bring you an enclosed extensive list of equipment that's been replaced over the course of its past year, and none of these items that are on this list have value over $5,000. A lot of this is technology items and old desks. The technology items, like always, any computer chips will be drilled and destroyed completely and recycled. So my recommendation is to approve the designated equipment for surplus.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the designated equipment as surplus for disposal.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there a discussion on the surplus list and the disposal thereof? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor of approving of the surplus materials list, please signify. That passes unanimously. The fifth agenda item is to update ISBA policies.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last month, we approved the ISBA to do a comprehensive policy management program. They're in the process right now updating that. I contacted Julie Slavens with the ISBA, and she's just waiting for them to get back to her as we uploaded policies from 1928 till today. Roughly 90 plus years. So she's putting those all in a Word file to where we'll be able to upload those into the board docs. At this time, of course, July 1st has passed, and we will follow state law. And anything that has been passed already, our policies, I want to make sure we have enough time to review them before we come back. And this is going to take a process, but we'll try to chunk those in each meeting from here on out to have time to review and make sure they sit to where they need to follow the law, codes, and regulations. But the first one that we must pass so we can finish the Teacher Appreciation Grant is we need to yearly approve the TAG, or the Teacher Appreciation Grant. So my recommendation is to approve that grant so I can finalize our evaluation plan for our teachers to get that grant.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the policy specifically dealing with the Teacher Appreciation Grant.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there discussion about the Teacher Appreciation Grant being approved again this year? All right, would all those in favor of approving the Teacher Appreciation Grant for this coming year, please signify. And that passes unanimously. The sixth agenda item is the budget assumptions for the 2023 calendar year.
Over the remainder of the month, the budget for 2023, 6 months away, will be created. At the base level, the budget for 2023 will be very similar to the current budget of 2022. With saying that, again, we have, remember, 4 or 5 years ago in 2018, they moved from all these different funds to 2 major funds, the Education Fund and Operation Fund. Inside of the Operation Fund is the Capital Asset Fund, and that's what we'll be talking about in the next agenda item. But in general, we are going to continue to have a kind of a preventive budget, very similar to last year, with not knowing what's happening as we're coming out of COVID and the next few months and the next year. We feel like we will have a balanced budget, maintain our cash balance. Our ADM were projected last year about 1842 is where we ended up in the fall. Mr. Disney has promised me 1850 to 1900. So the more students, the more money. And if the revenue is there, then we will be in very good shape. So we are kind of sitting tight on kind of a preventive budget to see what our ADM is. Currently, we are at about the 1800 mark, but that's pretty normal. Usually we're running 1750 to 1800. I will tell our students and parents that registration is open. It was open July 1st on our new website and our new registration links that they can apply and click that button. If they're returning students, they can go ahead and sign up. If they're new students, they need to set up an appointment with our building principal. But back to the Education Fund, we feel like we will be very balanced this year. The Operation Fund, with our capital, with our property taxes, doing very well in our assets or assessed value for the corporation and for the town is doing extremely well. Our Operations Fund will be, again, maintaining the facilities, technology, transportation, and other flexibility in our staffing in 2023. Our referendum fund rate will remain stable. And again, that's a tax rate that we can raise up to 59 cents. With the last few years, we've been right around 50 to 53 cents in the referendum. Debt service, we do have newbies still sitting there, but it'll be paid off in a couple years. And again, that's 0.05, so that's a nickel for those 5 classrooms that we added, along with textbook fees that we must pay for textbook reimbursement. So that's where our debt fund comes from. Our total tax rate, I think that's the big one. We've been running anywhere from 86 to 90 cents, and we'll be right at 90 again. So we're not looking at increasing our tax rate for our people of the town, and that's pretty impressive right now with what's going on with inflation. I think we can do this right around 90, 91 cents again. So that's the budget assumptions as of right now.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion about the budget assumptions?
I think it bears repeating that with our referendum fund, we have the option to take more, but we've chosen to keep that number as low as possible to maintain that we're not taking the full amount that we could. We have that ability to balance our budget and be good stewards of the tax dollar, and I think that's important for the public to remember.
And like a few of you have been on the board for many, many years, and that's not in a bad way, but in a good way. That's what we've always done. That's our stance on how we do. We don't take more than what we need. And we live with what we're dealt with, and right now our team's doing a great job with that.
Thank you. The seventh agenda item this evening is to authorize the publication of the 2023 Capital Assets Plan.
Once a year, we start our budget season, and this is really the kickoff here with the 23 capital asset plan. I would just like to remind you, this 6 months off. So we have to predict and make determinations of what we believe for next year. So here's the easy ones. Anything over $10,000, we're required by law to state what we're going to do. And we've had a great plan for the last 4 or 5 years with our focus from this board and our administration to focus on safety, number one, as we've added safety doors in all of our elementaries. And we are taking care of the high school now for a single point of entry, as that has been a primary focus of this board and our administration team and our teachers for our community and our students. So next year, as the high school project is wrapping up, as we receive the school safety grant for $100,000, the total project, again, we thought was going to be around $400,000 to $500,000, and it came in at $300,000. So sorry, I was wrong on that one. Came in less. So the high school will be moving in next week, and we're pretty pleased with what we did for what we put into it and for the value what we have. But every student any visitor after 8 o'clock to 3:20 for the first time since 1963 will have to go through an office before they get into the student body. And that's just, if you've ever been there, and Mr. Claiborne's still here, he knows, as I was a sitting principal too, that's a little nerve-wracking day in, day out, and I'm glad we can get that fixed and for the safety of our schools. So next year, the capital asset plan will be focused on the junior high and Fisher because it's basically the same layout. There'll be a few things that we'll have to do differently. And now that we went through the high school, I know that we can do those differently. We've learned from our first project. But this project and the capital asset plan is for that project, the junior high safety in Fisher. And we have $400,000 appropriated for that. And I feel like, again, unless inflation really kicks in, I think we can do it for that. And then $100,000 for all the technologies and servers and switches and all the other things they keep telling me we continue to need. We're looking at a truck and a batwing mower and a parking lot resurface. So some of those are just kind of floating. And if we don't need them, we don't do it. And we have them on the list. If you'll take note of the front of the high school, it's the front parking lot is starting to crumble, and we want to catch it before we have major potholes in that. So we're taking a look at that, and if we get a good price on that, we'll get some quotes, and I can bring that to you and say, let's go ahead and move on that. The back parking lot is, it's big, and it's not in as bad shape as the front. But if we can clean that whole area up right there, and I'd be pretty happy with that. Just to let you know, also in the capital asset plan is directional signs that we've not had in Speedway schools. So we're looking at adding that, mainly for a safety reason too, so people know where to go. But those are going to be added hopefully in the next month also. So that's kind of last year's plan. But just think of it, the total safety is our focus to make sure that we continue to add to all of our buildings for that.
Is there a motion to authorize the publication of the 2023 Capital Assets Plan?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the Capital Assets Plan and its publication? Would all those in favor of publication of the 2023 Capital Assets Plan please signify? And it passes unanimously. The eighth agenda item this evening is an update on the Return to Instruction Plan.
Good evening. The agenda item titled Return to Instruction Plan may be a little confusing since we have returned to in-person instruction already. So if I may, I'll just explain why this is an agenda item. When COVID shut schools down, the federal government offered a series of grants that we now call relief grants or ESSER grants. And anytime you accept money through a grant from our federal government, there are a series of requirements that you have to follow to be able to show that you're using those funds as intended and following why they're allowing you to have this funding. And so for the ESSER grants, one of those requirements is that every 6 months, we're updating our return to instruction plan. This document used to be much more extensive and outlined all of those protocols we were following to try to get students back in person and to be able to educate students in person. You know, all the things that we've spent so much time on, how far apart do we need to have students social distance in classrooms? What will our protocols be in the cafeteria? And luckily, we're down to a pretty minimal list. So what you have in front of you is the proposed revision to our current return to instruction plan. We are luckily back in person, and at this time, masks are optional, and it also states here what will happen if a student does have a positive COVID test. And hopefully things stay right here as they are, but we'll update accordingly and bring that to you should we need to make adjustments if COVID should shift again. But that's the current state of our protocols. And if you approve this tonight, then we'll be updating this on our website tomorrow. And so the previous protocols would be removed, and then this would replace what's there.
I have a question.
Sure.
The test positive for COVID should remain home for 5 days. They may return to school on day 6. And maybe it just is the way it's done, so it's not confusing, but that almost suggests 5 school days, and it's not, right?
I'm going to have to tee this over to Mr. Disney.
That is correct. It is 5 days, whether that be weekend or
calendar
calendar days.
Yeah, and so maybe could we add remain home for 5 calendar days?
Sure.
Just
Yep, I
because
think
it's
that
kind of
makes
weird, right?
sense.
Because you are home from school on Saturday and Sunday anyhow.
Yes.
So that doesn't,
Yep. I think that's a great
on the
idea.
6th
Good
calendar
suggestion.
day.
Certainly don't want
Yeah.
that to be misconstrued and students to miss any more days than they need to.
That's my only.
That edit.
So, does anybody else have?
I don't have anything.
So let's say with that, I move that we approve the update on return to instruction plan with that revision.
Second?
Thank you. Any other discussion on the return to instruction plan? Would all those in favor of the revised return to instruction plan, please signify. And it passes unanimously.
Do you want me to update on?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay. So also in your packet, and this one's just really for informational purposes, is what I call kind of a basic ledger of the 3 major relief grants that we've accepted, CARES, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. And it outlines what we've budgeted in those different grants. Just for the board's knowledge, though you likely know already, but anybody tuning in, any one of these grants we have to apply for, and in that application we explain through narrative and also through a budget what we intend to spend the funds on. Anytime we want to change what we're spending those funds on, we have to submit an amendment to our grant before we can spend those funds. And also now kind of kicking in later, but we're beginning to have to do some pretty extensive quarterly reporting on these relief funds to report back to our state, and then so they can report to the federal government that districts are using these funds as they were intended. So a lot of what we've either spent relief funds on or what we're intending to spend relief funds on are some things that would be pretty obvious when it comes to COVID technology, to make sure that students had appropriate Chromebooks in hand when they had to be home, maintenance and cleaning supplies, masks, PPE, all of those are obvious things. And then it also outlines some other pieces that are smaller expenditures, but some things that people may not think about. As an example, after that first shutdown, we asked, and our special education staff that are involved in special education evaluations came in and spent some additional time over the summer evaluating students that couldn't go through special education evaluations when we couldn't have children in person. So these grants have been helpful in offsetting some of those unexpected costs that came along with COVID and all of the residual effects that we're continuing to feel. So hopefully that at least just provides an update on where those are currently sitting. And it's flexible because ESSER 3, the largest of those grants, doesn't have to be spent out until September of 2024. So we're amending often and expect that we'll have to make more changes.
And the percentage that we used on this money, what we're very proud about has been directly input into the classrooms. So
Sure.
I know a lot of people, you're going to see some things down the road, they're like, now, what'd you spend it on? But for I would say well over 60, 70% of our money that we received, we try to get it back to the student because that's just what we do. And I feel very confident of that, especially with the mental and behavioral health that we had coming out, that we've added some additional staff members to help out. And I feel like it's been successful for our students.
Sure.
I want to thank you because this is really nice for us to see all this. I appreciate the time you took for that. That's very
It's
nice.
a lot of work.
It is a
Try
lot
to-
of work, and it's very nice.
Try to
we're
keep
being
it
audited
updated,
on
and we
it,
can
so
share that with you anytime.
Very nice,
Yeah.
thank you.
No problem. All right. Thank you
So
for your
much.
time. Thank you.
The ninth agenda item this evening is an acknowledgement of the $282,715.01 that we received in grants.
Thank you.
The 10th agenda item is personnel report.
It's a busy time of year in the HR world. We have several items on the personnel report this evening for your review and hopefully approval. We have several resignations. Ryan Noblet, varsity football coach. Danny Masariu is the varsity assistant boys basketball coach. Sam Aarons. Sam has had 3 positions: varsity assistant football coach, 7th grade boys basketball coach, and assistant baseball coach. Madeline Storrs, who is a science teacher at the high school. Joellen Kramer, who was a cafeteria worker at Fisher Junior High, and Matt Neighbors, who was in technology. We have 3 individuals who have requested disability leave. Haley Goodyear, teacher, 4th grader at Wheeler. Kyla Monroe, a teacher, 1st grader at Wheeler, and Cassandra Johnson, an 8th grade language arts teacher at the junior high. In employment, we have Steve Stocker, athletic director at Speedway High School. Sandra Brown, who's going to take a temporary teacher contract for Haley Goodyear. Taryn Moran, taking a temporary teacher contract for Kylie Monroe. And Susan Mantala, who worked with us in the cafeteria, is moving from a 4-hour position to a 6-hour position. Also in your packet is an update on our ECA, our extracurricular accounts, which is our coaching and our sponsors. And you can see in the, and I color-coded on your accounts, on your page, where if it's a green person, it's listed. That person's new to the position. And if a person is in blue, that person is just moving, is a current employee that's just moving from one spot to another. I would ask you to present or to approve the personnel report as presented.
President, I'll make a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions about the personnel report? Hearing and seeing none, would all those in favor of accepting the personnel report as presented, please signify. And it passes unanimously. The 11th agenda item is recognition of visitors and for other business. Is there any other business to bring before the board?
Mr. President, Dr. Trevely mentioned about the new registration on our website, and there has been a question about when a returning student or any student or parent goes on there to pay for their fees. It's a good place for us to remind people that it's a new fee system also. So if you're going to pay your fees online, you just have to create a new account. There's directions how to do that on our website, and then you can pay your fees on our website. So if there's any questions with that, your best option is to contact the schools, and they can help you with that process.
Any other new business? All right, then we'll adjourn to approve claims.